any unanswered questions will be forwarded to our speakers and you'll receive a response from us. Overall, we'll be talking about why there is proportionally less women in construction, what we can do about it, and encouragement from a young age, and how we can achieve more women in construction. So without further ado, I will hand over to my first guest speaker, and that is Chloe.
Hello, good morning. My name is Chloe Page Heron. I'm 24 years old and I'm an assistant construction manager at Glencar Construction. A little bit about me. I've been in the construction industry for just over 2 years now and pretty much loved every minute of it. I graduated from university in 2018 with a first-class business and project management degree. And when I first started at university, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. But I've always been interested in architecture and super nosy around building sites. I then came across my project management lecturer who had worked in construction for over 10 years and clearly had such a passion for the industry. This pushed me to investigate an industry in the career, as a career opportunity, and it quickly convinced me that it was the right direction for me, just because I like meeting new people and just doing something that people don't quite expect you to do. Due to my degree being non-construction related, I wrote my dissertation on how multiculturalism affects project success on the construction industry. And then I started applying to multiple construction firms across a range of sectors, from residential to industrial, infrastructure, and pretty much everything else. After a few months of job applications, I decided that I had to be a bit more direct, as I wasn't getting the kind of responses that I was expecting to receive. So I chose my preferred contractor and decided to approach them in person. I followed up personally at Glencar by simply just walking into their office and introducing myself, asking for feedback on my application, or looking for an opportunity to gain some work experience in the industry and proving that I had the ability to work in the industry. I was lucky enough that I actually spoke to one of the directors, and he arranged for me to have an interview later that week, and the week after I started my work experience. So a little bit about Glencar Construction. Glencar are a contractor specialising in the creation of high quality turnkey facilities in partnership with some of the UK's leading developers, occupiers, retailers and logistics businesses. Glencar specialise in the delivery of new build refurbishments, fit out projects, and have a wealth of experience working in live environments with existing businesses to ensure as little disruption as possible. Just recently, Glencar have been recognised by the Financial Times as one of Europe's fastest growing companies in the FT 1000, as well as being in the top spot on the Sunday Times Virgin Atlantic Fast Track 100 league table in December, which we're all super excited about. But then following my 2-week work experience, I was offered a role as a management trainee, which sees me move through the 3 main branches of Glencar Construction, which are estimating, quantity surveying and operational management. This helps me gain experience of how all the branches work together and a well-rounded baseline knowledge of the construction industry and the Glencar business model itself. So starting in estimating, I assisted mainly with the tendering process, which is when we give the clients or the client's agent a cost estimate supported by a programme for the work that they would like undertaken. This gave me a great understanding of how to interpret drawings and the importance of creating relationships with the supply chain and the clients alike. I then moved into the operational side of Glencar, beginning as a graduate construction manager on site, where we were demolishing 4 existing warehouses and building 4 new industrial units in their space. A typical day on a Glencar construction site for me begins with a site walk around to ensure that all plant, scaffold and storage areas are compliant with the HSE and Glencar standards. Next, daily inductions for new subcontractors, followed by daily action briefings attended by the supervisors of the trades.
I literally stayed in bed all weekend. My friend came around on Saturday, and that was
This is where we set out working areas, exclusion zones, and coordinate the progression of work for that day. Then the majority of the day is spent out on site, issuing permits, ensuring all trades are complying with health and safety, performing quality checks on the trades themselves, and learning the specific ins and outs from the trades themselves. And there's no one better to learn from than the people who do the job themselves. Returning to the site office, I do all boring things like answering emails, making sure all of our registers are up to date, and our site waste management plan, BREEAM, and drawing registers are all updated on a weekly basis. So being on this project from conception to completion really instilled in me that construction was what I wanted to do, and being on site was where I belonged, as I love the fast pace and that every single day is different, and from morning to afternoon, your whole day changes. Finally, I finished my project management trainee program in quantity surveying, which manages the cost and budget of the project from the outset to completion. I was assisting with procurement, conversing with subcontractors, starting to understand legal documents such as contracts and warranties, and issuing and processing payments. Glencar's quantity training surveying program ensures that you're exposed to all aspects of the role. Opportunities to attend client meetings ranging from tender stage to design team meetings and practical completion handovers are invaluable for creating industry contacts and providing new insight into the inner workings of Glencar and the projects themselves, because it's so vital that the commercial and the operational teams work together. The whole project is a team effort, and it doesn't happen if everyone's not on the same page. So the construction industry is growing at a phenomenal rate, as I'm sure you're about to hear, and it's in high demand in both the commercial and the residential sector. The construction industry is one of the largest and most stable employers in the UK, and it's been proven through this current COVID climate of uncertainty. Glencar offer amazing opportunities to people who haven't had any industry experience. From work experience, we do placements, and obviously the management training program that I completed. So if anyone would like any more information about those, please don't hesitate to get in contact with me. So when I say the word construction, what is the first thing that you think about? I personally think of the tradespeople themselves with like high-vis jackets, safety boots, and safety helmets. And I think that is where the so-called stigma starts. Whilst I was in education, attending career days, or when you're listening to news items on construction, the language, the rhetoric, and the face always seems to be geared towards men. 2020 statistics show that about 13% of the entire construction industry is made up of women. And this percentage drops even further when you look at building sites themselves, where less than 1% of the site workforce is actually women. As an industry, the stigma needs to be broken that construction is for men. And I believe this needs to happen in classrooms, colleges, and universities. And I believe that everyone that's working within the industry has a role to play with initiating these conversations with younger people and educating on the wider roles that are available in construction. However, I also believe that there can be no real change without women stepping up to the plate themselves, identifying where they would like to be in the industry, and just simply going for it. Having the confidence to step into these roles that have historically been held by men proves that you already have what it takes to thrive in the industry. No one expects you to come into a new industry and a new role knowing it all. In fact, most people can't wait to share their knowledge and experience with you and take you under their wing. All you have to do is ask them. There is no sugarcoating it. I do believe that the construction industry can be difficult to work in. I do think you need a certain type of personality and a thick enough skin to stand up and be counted, especially if you're working on site like myself. However, I'm a strong believer in if you're enjoying what you're doing, then nothing should stop you from achieving what you want to achieve. There's always banter that takes place, and I think this is where people get a bit worried about with construction sites, but I actually really enjoy the banter. It's a bit of me. I've never been more disrespected than a night out than at work. Night out's always worse. So sometimes some people just say things on site and you think, would I have had that response if I was a man? But it's just a fleeting thought. And if you don't choose to pay attention to it, then it doesn't bother you. I personally believe that stigma around women in construction only has power when you choose to pay attention to it. It's true that typically construction is a man's world, and 99% of the time I find myself to be the only woman in the room. But I don't see this as a negative. being a woman in construction automatically makes you stand out and makes you unique. And it's such an asset because you can bring a different perspective to the way that you think about a project and the way that you can move a project forward. It's your superpower, basically, if you choose to see it that way. There are subtle things that I personally have implemented into my routine to ensure that there's a level of respect for myself and my role on site. The main thing that I do is that I hold the site inductions. So this is a great way of the subcontractors getting to know my position on site, because no worker is allowed to start unless I have inducted them personally. This also lets each subcontractor get to know me, my level, and how we're going to move forward in our professional relationship. The second piece of advice that I received within my first 6 months of the industry, and that I've implemented into my daily, I don't know, go about, is that if anything makes you feel uncomfortable, you just need to address it straight away yourself. And something simple like, I'd like to remind you that this is a professional environment and you need to act accordingly, really nips it in the bud straight away. So how do we encourage women into the construction industry? I think we start by creating inclusive job listings, which emphasize the company's commitment to diversity and inclusion. Also, including women in the hiring process. So when you walk into a room and not just faced by a wall of men, I think would really, really help. Using employed women such as myself and all the rest of the guest speakers as role models and spokespeople helps to enable women to visualize themselves in those roles. It also seems obvious, but pay, benefits, types of works, opportunity, and day-to-day treatment all matter. So yeah, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to speak today. I think that the women supporting women in this industry is absolutely fundamental and it can't be overlooked in its importance. But also, focusing solely on your gender within this industry could have a polarising effect. So it's something to watch out for. I'll finish with the question that I get asked most on site, which is, why did I choose to work in construction? And my answer is always, why not? So if anyone has any questions for me, then feel free.
Thank you, Chloe. So does anyone have any questions for Chloe? Feel free to pop them in the chat and Chloe will answer your questions. And Chloe, you're absolutely right. The stigma around construction, a lot of it is sometimes our own selves not believing that we can do it.
100%. And I think that that comes from not seeing enough of ourselves in these type of roles. But yeah, it only takes yourself to realise that you could do the job. And once you think you can do the job, other people will simply believe that you can too.
Exactly. It's a lot of it is self-doubt and not 100%. Believing that we could do what the rest of them can do.
I mean, I still walk into rooms sometimes when you're the only female and you think, oh no, but like I said, it's your superpower. It automatically makes you unique. People are always going to remember you. You get better opportunities. I personally think it's a great thing.
Definitely. Absolutely. So, hearing Chloe's experience with Glencar and the opportunities that they offer, I suppose really what we're looking for is more companies to offer the opportunities that Glencar offer.
Yes.
And more companies to say, look, we know that not everyone knows everything about construction. Definitely. So here's the starting block to work your way all the way up to the top.
I mean, when I first joined Glencar, I joined Glencar within its first 2 years of being a company, and they didn't really have a set management trainee program in place. But there was myself and another boy who had no industry knowledge who joined at the same time. And together, working together with the Glencar people, we decided that this was the best kind of way to get us in and understand how the industry revolves and how we all work together, and then moving forward from there, it's been a really successful program. So even if a company that you want to approach doesn't have a program like that in place, simply offering the opportunity for them to be able to offer it to you automatically makes you stand out, because you're thinking of them and how their business can continue to grow and evolve.
Yeah, exactly. We've had a lovely question from Joanne Delderfield. She said, where do you see yourself ultimately in your career?
I think at the moment that I just see myself continuing to progress on site. So currently I'm an assistant construction manager. I'd like to get to project manager levels. That's 2 more steps up for me. And then maybe moving on to a contract manager, so kind of managing multiple construction sites. But for me, I would much like to stay on the site day to day. I don't really like sitting behind the table in the office. So I like being out on site. So I see myself progressing further up just in the site world.
Yeah, so staying in the site.
Yeah.
Out in the fresh air. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I've still got a lot to learn. 2 years in the industry might feel like a long time, but when you get on site and you meet these people who've been doing it for 25, 30 years, I'm just a baby in comparison to them. So I've still got a lot to learn.
Well, I must say, I think we can all agree that you've done very well for 2 years in the industry.
Thank you very much.
I think it's incredible. So our next guest speaker is Carly. Carly is the Group Health and Safety Advisor.
Hi everyone. Thank you for that, Chloe Page. That was really good. It's actually really interesting to listen to someone who we're the same age, we're both 24, and it's quite nice to hear from someone who is of a similar age and quite a similar like field-based role, which is quite nice. So yeah, I'll just break this down into like 3 kind of parts. So I'll explain a little bit about myself and my experience and my career in health and safety. And then just like Harriet's agenda there, I'll mention a little bit about career paths and the health and safety qualifications route. So my name's Carly Hughes. I'm the Group Health, Safety and Environmental Advisor for Persimmon Homes, and I'm based in the Anglia region, so that is primarily Norfolk and some of Suffolk. I've worked for Persimmon now for just over 18 months. I started off as an assistant Group Health and Safety Advisor, and I was recently promoted to Group. So I'll just kind of explain it chronologically. So when I was 18 years old, I'd just finished my A-levels at college. However, I didn't want to go to university because I had no idea what I wanted to do, like most 18-year-olds at the time. However, I knew from the get-go that I could not sit behind a desk all day long. So what I did was I started off in my first job as a health and safety administrator for a local offshore company. And I was there for, I think it was about 2.5 years, maybe 3 years. So I started off predominantly in oil and gas and renewables. It was there where I passed my my NEBOSH general certificate. And if you don't know what like NEBOSH or some of these qualifications that I'm going to say, I will explain them more in a little bit more detail shortly. So I did my first health and safety qualification when I was working for my first company. And then when I was around 21, 22, I then moved to a more, it was like a manufacturing workshop. And it was there where the company made and manufactured coiled tubing units that are then sent offshore. So I'd kind of worked in the oil and gas industry to start with. Then I worked for a company that made and manufactured the parts that go offshore, and that was still working within health and safety, but it was a more, it was kind of like the next step up. So I was an administrator, and then I went into being a health and safety coordinator. So that involved kind of managing all sorts of different trades. So we had welders, fabricators, excuse me, electricians, painters, everything. And this was all over 3 or 4 workshops. So it was quite a big workforce. And once I was there, I think I was there for about 2 years. I then moved on to working in construction, which is what I do now. So I've always been in health and safety for the whole of my adult career, as I call it, even though it's only been kind of like 6, 7 years. But I've always worked within health and safety, and I've always had a passion for helping people. That is kind of my my foundation from the get-go, and naturally at the minute I now work within construction. So I'll just kind of explain what my current job role entails. And it does sound very similar in some ways to what Chloe Page was talking about. So as a group health, safety and environmental advisor, a lot of my job role is field-based. So I spend about 80% of my working week outside. I am on construction sites every single day. And some of you may know Persimmon, they build houses. So a lot of my day is spent up scaffolds, around scaffolds, looking at excavations, checking things like welfare, working at height, PPE, dust, everything that you can think of, from literally having a field with nothing in it all the way up to a completed housing estate. So like I mentioned, a lot of my role is very field-based. However, there are some kind of admin sides that come with it naturally. So say 80% of the week is practical. A lot of the time I get phone calls, not just from the site managers or the assistant site managers, but from the regional office as well, asking for health and safety advice, or can we do this, can we do that? Communication is a massive, massive part of my job role. And I've always said, if you want to work within health and safety, or even in construction, you have to be a people person. You have to be able to talk to people, because that is 99% of your job role. If you can't communicate in the nature of my job, you're not going to be able to build a house. You know, it's kind, you can apply it to all kind of industries. So yeah, we've got the field-based part, and we've got the theory and all the admin and things like that go with it. But essentially, it's my job to see a situation. If something crops up on site, I need to analyse it. I need to implement any law if it's necessary, or legislations or regulations or acts or whatever. And we have to overcome the problem with effective control measures. Now, I'm a very realistic person, and I know that health and safety, especially as a young female, has so much stigma behind it. And they naturally always assume when, oh, health and safety rock up on site, it's like, oh, you're going to walk around with your clipboard and you're going to recite this and you're going to recite that. That is not a good health and safety advisor, in my opinion. You have to be a people person. You have to be approachable. And like Chloe Page mentioned, I am normally always the only female on site. So you do have to, like we've mentioned, you do have to have a thick skin. You have to be able to give that banter backwards and forwards, and you can't take things personally, because it just won't, you'll just get upset, and it's just not, it's not worth it, you know. So yeah, it's like we've touched, it's a very male dominated industry, but you have to have the confidence within yourself to apply your knowledge and apply your qualifications, apply your experience. And you know, if someone came up to me and asked me a question about, I don't know, what is meant to be the height of that scaffold, I'm not a scaffolder, I don't know, but I'll go and find out. That's a key kind of quality that I think that anyone in any job role should have, especially females, males, young, old. If you don't know the answer to something, it's about knowing where to go to find the answer. Don't lie, don't make it up on the spot. Just be honest and say, I don't know, I'll go and find out for you. And it's about knowing who to go and where to get your information from. And I think that's a massive, massive key and massive importance in this kind of industry. So yeah, oh, hang on, I think I've had a question. Do you find that being the only female health and safety on site, you are more approachable? So I do get a lot of questions, which I'm not discouraging. I want people to come and talk to me, especially at the minute with the current climate, with COVID and the pandemic and everything that's going on. Very fortunately, my job role hasn't changed. We're still allowed to build houses, we're still allowed to go out, and I can still go to work. And I actually think that it's sometimes quite nice that we are allowed to still work, and people do come and talk to me. But yeah, you have to be approachable. And I do sometimes think, and maybe this is a bit of a stigma in itself, women, we do have that a bit more of an empathetic side. We can see things a little bit differently, which Chloe Page touched on actually. It's sometimes good to have a female on board, because we see things sometimes differently. Everyone sees things differently, but sometimes women can kind of see the more emotive side of things and the more, you know, the empathy and things like that. But yeah, so just going back to what Chloe Page said, you have to be thick-skinned. You can't take things personally, because it never is personal. It's never personal. No one says, no one's horrible. You don't get any comments or anything like that. But yeah, so on the flip side, sorry, going back to how practical my job role is, 9 times out of 10, I don't look like this on site. My hair is up. I've got a hard hat on. I never wear any makeup because there's just no point, in my opinion, because it's either going to rain, you're going to get covered in, like, I don't know, mud, your trousers get absolutely ruined. It's just really funny. But yeah, and then on the flip side of that, the following day, I could be in a board meeting with senior management, in which instance, this is probably what you're probably going to see. So yeah, you have to be able to communicate with subcontractors on site, apprentices, carpenters, scaffolders, ground workers, and then in the afternoon or in the next day, you could be having a conversation with the managing director of the business. You know, it's very varied. My role as a safety advisor is very varied, but the key foundation, the key benchmark is you have to be able to talk to people, and you have to be able to tailor what you're saying to different people and how people approach it. So it is really important. So we've got like I go to board meetings. I have reports that I have to send every month. Naturally, at the minute, on a weekly basis, I have to do all like the COVID paperwork and things like that. And that threw a massive spanner in the works a year ago. Trying to look after 13 construction sites in my region, and then having COVID come along really throws a spanner in the works. But like Chloe Page mentioned as well, none of my days are the same. I could have a call and have to go to a different site in the afternoon. I could go to a meeting in the morning. And that's what I love about my job role. I'm not sat at my desk 9 to 5 days a week, because I personally, in my opinion, I just can't do that. I can't sit still. I have to be up and doing things. So that's kind of a little bit about my current job role and where I am. And I know I've kind of given like a bit of I kind of just go all over the place, but hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight into my role. So I'll just move on to kind of the itinerary there that says different career paths. So I mentioned that I started off as an administrator. So that was dealing with all the paperwork and all of the stats, all of the kind of project paperwork and things like that. I then went to be a coordinator after that. So I was coordinating all these different workshops and warehouses, and I had all these different trades, welders, fabricators, painters, and trying to manage all of those. I'm now an advisor, so it's my job to advise the company that I work for of legislation updates, any alerts that come out from the HBF or the HSE, all sorts of things like that, all the boards that we adhere to. But just moving on to kind of different roles that you can have. You know, I mean, I've just made a couple of notes here, actually. There's so many different career paths that you can go down. You can start off as an apprentice. I know there's actually, and I see this all the time on LinkedIn, health and safety apprentices are now a thing. And I so wish that was a thing when I was 18, like, because you have to try and target or kind of broaden these opportunities for people at a younger age. So many people think that health and safety is like a secondary career, and a lot of the health and safety professionals nowadays are ex-military, but I'm living proof that you can start health and safety as your first career, and I feel like that should be offered to you at a younger age, you know. So that's definitely something that I think that the industry, not just for females but for both females and males, that we could do to improve. You could be, I mean, you start off as an administrator or an apprentice and you can work your way up. Eventually, you could become health and safety manager. So that could be responsible for looking after a team of advisors or administrators or officers, you know, whatever you've got. So that's kind of probably the next stage up. And then after a manager or like a senior advisor or something like that, you could become a consultant. And that's essentially where I would like to be. But that's, you have to have such a breadth, like a massive amount of experience and qualifications, and you can advise companies and businesses on how to manage their organisation safely. So there's loads of different career paths that you can have. And then just moving on to qualifications, there's so many qualifications out there with regards to health and safety. So I mentioned earlier about NEBOSH. So that stands for the National Exam Board of Occupational Safety and Health. That is your health and safety advisor's bread and butter. So you could have, I can't remember how many there are off the top of my head, but there are probably like 6, 7, 8 certificates that you can do. So you've got the NEBOSH certificate in occupational health and safety, which is how I started. You can then move on to fire or environmental, construction. There's so many different ones that you can do now, depending on the industry that you work in. And I do think, just speaking from a health and safety perspective, that is a very good starting point for any health and safety professional, male or female. You've got your IOSH qualifications, so you're working safely or you're managing safely. I'd probably advise doing those before you do NEBOSH, just so it kind of eases you into it. And once you've done your NEBOSH certificates, you could then go up to like the next level qualification, which is a level 6, which is either your NEBOSH diploma, your NCRQ, which stands for National Compliance and Risk Qualification, or a degree. So there are lots of universities now that offer degrees in occupational safety and health or environmental management. There's loads of different routes you can go down. So you've got your level 6, which is currently what I'm doing. So I'm currently studying for my level 6 diploma in National Compliance and Risk Qualification in Applied Health and Safety. And then above that, you've got your masters. So that's kind of like a level 7, I think, off the top of my head. I'm not too sure. But yeah, there's so many things out there relating to environmental. You've got all the IEMA qualifications and things like that. There's so much out there, and it all depends on how you want to learn as an individual as well. You could be completely fine being classroom based. You could do things online. You can do things like is it like open distance, you know, all sorts of things like that. So many qualifications out there. But you've also got your memberships as well. So as a safety professional, your kind of top 2, in my opinion, memberships are IOSH, so the Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, and the, I can't pronounce it, I think it's called IRISM, the International Institute of Risk Safety Management. And they're really good memberships to be a part of. They offer you a lot of personal development, webinars, useful materials, and all sorts of things like that. So there's just so much out there. And just kind of coming back to like the purpose of this webinar is, I strongly advise anyone listening to this video and this presentation, have confidence in yourself, because only you're in control of your own career and your own life essentially. And even though if you're a female, you know, have the confidence, stand up, kind of what Chloe Page mentioned, you know, like 9 times out of 10 when I walk into a meeting, I'm the only female in there, but it makes you stand out and you have your own spin on things. And so long as you're confident and you can compose yourself and kind of contribute as best as you can and apply your knowledge, why shouldn't you be in there? And I think, I completely empower women to just go for it. Why should construction and health and safety be male dominated? You know, there should be a balance completely. And this is what International Women's Day is all about. So I'm all for empowering women. So I hope I do ramble on. I'm quite conscious of the time. So yeah, if anyone has any questions for me, please feel free to drop me, say a message in the chat, or have a look at my LinkedIn as well. I'm happy to answer any questions on there, but I'll pass you back over to Harriet because I will just ramble on for ages.
Thank you ever so much, Carly. It's great to hear, like you said, that there's so many different routes into construction, like you said, with all the different health and safety qualifications. I mean, like you said, you're doing your next NEBOSH qualification. I mean, what is next for you?
So for me, I feel like I'm being put on the spot. So for me, I'm very happy in my job role at the minute. So for me, it's just about gaining more experience, kind of like what Chloe Page said. Very happy in our job roles at the minute, and it is just gaining that experience that you experience on a day-to-day basis. So for me at the minute, I'll be staying in my current job role, but But in terms of qualifications, I've literally just started my NCRQ, which is a level 6. So I'll be focusing on getting that achieved within the next year. And with that, kind of not wanting to bore people with all the memberships and things, but that will then give me graduate status with IOSH. So that's kind of my little goal in mind, to finish my NCRQ, achieve my grad IOSH status, and then after that it would be to become a chartered safety professional. And hopefully I can do that before I'm 30. I've got 6 years. I'm sure
well, I'm sure you will. We've all got complete confidence in you, and make sure you come back and tell us when you've done it.
No pressure.
No pressure, but we're all basically rooting for you now. Now that you've told us, you have to do it.
Recorded now.
Exactly. You can't go back on it now. Evidence.
Yep.
So next up we have our final speaker. I'm really pleased that she's agreed to come and talk to us. It's Lauren Wiltshire.
Hello, thanks Harriet, and thanks Carly and Chloe. It's really interesting to hear a bit about your guys' background as well. I'm probably slightly different in regards to, I do tend to like the warmth of an office. But no, so I've actually been in the industry for 11 and a half years. So originally so at the moment I work for a company called Hampshire Homes as land and planning director. But I did sort of start back, well, it goes back to when I was at school. I was probably in year 9, you go out to do your work experience, and one of my mum's friends was partner owned an architect's firm, and I loved grand designs, and I was like, yeah, I want to be an architect. Went and done my 2 weeks work experience in year 9, and then I was a smug one from then. I was like, I know what I want to do. I'm going to go to sixth form, I'm going to go to university, and I'm going to be an architect, and it's going to be great. So me being smug at school, thinking, oh, I know exactly where I'm going. Nobody else did. None of my friends had a clue. I got to, I think it must have been year 11. So you start going around to the colleges, and I said, right, I need to do this, this and this. And then I started looking at all the course criteria and the A levels. And I think there was about 4 A levels. And I was like, oh God, I didn't enjoy, I done school and I done okay at school, but I wouldn't say I overly enjoyed it. And I was looking at the A levels and I thought, oh God, this is going to be pretty intense. But no, it's fine, it's what I want to do. And then one of my friends actually happened to be going to a vocational college one evening. She wanted to be a hairdresser. So I thought, oh, I'll go along and I'll see what's about. And went, and there was a BTEC course there of construction in the built environment. And I happened to get chatting, and I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. So completely changed my ideas. I'm not going to go do A levels, I'm going to do this BTEC course. And then as I started the BTEC course, within about 2 months, I actually had a phone call from the architect's practice that I worked in, doing my work experience, saying, oh, do you want to come on board as an apprentice? And I thought, well, my luck was in. I was like, this is exactly it. I didn't even know I could get an apprenticeship in architecture. So I got the job there. And started, and after probably about 4 or 5 months, I was like, this isn't for me. This really is not for me. So I really enjoyed the idea around what I was doing, but sitting behind a desk, just drawing these houses or properties and not getting out there, for me, I was like, I want to be on the other side. I want to see it in fruition. I want to see the houses built. I want to see what I'm doing on paper in practice. So anyway, I sort of say, luckily, not for the business, of course, but they started to struggle. And through working as an apprentice, and I sort of got talking to developers and things, and I started talking to some technical managers at Barratt's and Taylor Wimpey's and all sorts of sort of more PLC developers. And I just happened to sort of think, right, okay, the company's not doing so well. I could take a voluntary redundancy and maybe look to go onto the development side. So I just happened to put my CV in, hope for the best. And again, it was all sort of by chance, and a technical apprenticeship came up with Barratt Homes. I sort of at the time, I was like, well, I don't really know much about it, but it sounded pretty good. I'd done some work with them. And so I started at Barratt. So this was just before must have been just for my 18th birthday, and I've never looked back from then. So I worked as a technical apprentice, and that people tend to get a little bit confused as what technical means. I remember I used to get sometimes calls asking if I was working on computers or I was in the IT team, but technical is basically all the foundations needed in order for a development site to start. So that goes down to the sort of CDM areas where Carly would probably get involved with, produce all the drawings and things that Chloe would need to in order to sort of take the site into fruition. The building control elements, which is the sort of the bodies that are put in place to ensure that you're building correctly, building to building regulations. You spend time on site, and it was a really, like I said, I loved it, and I sort of worked my way up through Barratt's to a technical projects manager. One of the really good things about Barratt's as well is when I worked there, is they gave you the option to do rotations similar to Chloe. And I didn't have a clue what a quantity surveyor was, or a buyer was, or a buyer to me is somebody that goes into the shop and buys a pack of sweets. I had no idea, and the sales elements, the marketing that was involved, and Barratt's were a massive advocate for it's not all muddy boots, and it's so true. And one of the slogans was, like I said, with the NHS, only sort of 20, I think it's about 25%, don't quote me on that, of the NHS are doctors and nurses. It's all the other elements that you just do not understand and do not know about within the industry that actually feeds into developing a house at the end of it. I think when I was at school, I saw a house, I think, it's a builder with his arse crack and a few bricks and off he goes. But there's so much more involved, and sort of going on to that is you don't understand. And when you're at school, you think, right, if I was at school and say I want to be a builder or I want to work for a builder's, it would just be assumed that, I'm a bit of a tomboy and I want to go and be a carpenter or a bricklayer. And I think as a young boy, that was always sort of deemed acceptable. As a young girl, I know that when I was at school, I don't know if it was the same for everyone, if you were potentially not as academic, the girls were sent on a beauty MVQ one day a week, and the boys were sent on a bricklaying MVQ one day a week. And I used to always think, oh God, that would be great. But because I probably didn't struggle as much academically, that was never given as an option. And to give those two as an option to people that maybe do struggle academically, I think is completely wrong. For one, this is very, very minute amount of people that may want to be a bricklayer or a beauty therapist. And also as well, I think if you do struggle academically, to be a beauty therapist, you've got to know the anatomy, you've got to know the dermatology. And so I think a lot of my friends that sort of went off to do beauty at college that may have struggled more academically at school thought, hang on a minute, is it such a large amount of science involved? But the amount of MVQs you can do, there's thousands. MVQ level ones. Why is one thing I've always been a massive believer of is why when you're at school, so if people that maybe not seen as academic does not mean that they're not destined for something. It just means that they may not be destined to be a bricklayer or a beauty therapist. You can do MVQs in health and safety, you can do them in carpentry, you can do them in quantity surveying, but there's such a lack of understanding at school age around what you can do in your future. So, and it's not the teacher's fault. It probably is more an industry-led thing. We're very cloak and daggers with what goes into a building development or what goes into sort of our end product. And that's one thing I think that as an industry, we need to probably focus on a lot more. Going back to when I was at Barratt's, they had a team that was solely focused on trying to bring in new talent to the business. And I don't know if Simon and Carl, I don't know if other companies do it, so I'm only going on my experiences, but we had a team that was called Aspire. And what they'd done is, it was young people like myself, we'd set it up and we went into schools and we educated classes or assemblies on again, it's not all muddy boots. So to be in construction, you don't have to go and lay bricks. You don't have to go and dig holes in the mud all the time. That might be something that you want to do, but it's not all about that. And I think as a young person, you sort of think, oh, okay, what am I going to be when I'm older? Am I going to be a doctor or a vet? Or there's no understanding. I don't know anyone, I may be wrong, that when they're sort of in year 9 or 10 thinks, do you know what, I want to be a quantity surveyor. I want to be a buyer for a housing developer, because there's just not that understanding there. And I think for boys, it's a much easier route to potentially get into, because a lot of the time when you see a lot of the site managers that I've worked with and a lot of the construction managers and quantity surveyors, they all started off maybe as trades. So they started off as carpenters. They got a quicker route onto the development site to see the wider picture. And whereas with the girls, like I said, you don't tend to be pushed down that route. I'm not saying that they should be pushed down that route, but I think having that education, that understanding at an early age that, okay, if you want to be an accountant, go work for a PLC or go work for a big corporate company like a developer, because there's such a buoyant industry, and the levels and the changes that you would see as an accounts manager in a PLC company or a housing developer or a contractor is just as interesting as you would see as working for an accountancy firm. And also, if anything, I'd probably see it more interesting, because you get such a wider view of another part of a business. I know that when I was at Barracks, and I've also worked at Taylor Wimpey in my career, a lot of the time we used to invite some of the office team that may not get to go out as much out onto site, and they all got their boots and their hard hats on and their jackets, and got to go around and actually see what they were paying for on the invoices and things. And it's something that I'm definitely a big advocate for. But obviously going on, rambling on. When we done this, we went into schools. Obviously, this was a divisional thing, so we probably only touched a very small part of this. With Southampton, I'm Southampton based, so sort of Southampton, Havant, Fareham areas, and it's just, I definitely think it's something that maybe even the local authorities should be pushing more. I don't know if anyone's familiar, but you have like a Section 106 agreement when you have a planning application, and it's a legal agreement in order to develop a scheme. And within that, you tend to have things like employment skills plans. Employment skills plans to a lot of developers and contractors are very much seen as a tick box exercise, but companies like ours and companies that I've worked in previously have always been quite positive around employment skills, and tried to promote the apprenticeship routes. And as Carly said, it's not just apprenticeships in bricklaying and carpenters. You can do health and safety apprenticeships. You can do quantity surveying apprenticeships. You can do technical apprenticeships. And there's so many different routes you can go down, but there's just such a lack of understanding. So I think, like I said, through doing job fairs, going into schools, albeit we've all got our day jobs to do, which at the end of the day, as we all know, take up a lot of time, if not all of our time. But things that the local authorities could push down, rather than sort of saying, oh, well, you need to tick this exercise, have a couple of apprentices on site from the local area, which again is a really good thing to do. They need to drum into that a little bit more, and maybe push developers to say, okay, well, maybe don't give us so much money to do this, that, and the other. Maybe we could ask you to do one job fair a year, or visit one of our local schools a year over the time of your construction period. Invite some on a weekday, sort of shut down the site for a couple of hours, or sort of bring it down to a safe and secure level. So don't want Carly to tell me off from a health and safety point of view, but invite the schools down, invite the kids down to either a building site or even a head office, and see what goes on and see what's involved. And I said, if you don't just have to. I'm sorry, what question? So do you think colleges, schools are promoting the correct level of construction to women, and are companies promoting recruiting for women enough? I've always been in a very fortunate position to feel that as a female in the industry, I've always been held in quite high regard, and I've never felt that being a female has ever stood in my way. If anything, similar to what Chloe and Carly said, it is sort of giving you a bit more of an edge. And you do tend to be the only woman in a room sometimes, which can be daunting, but actually it can be quite a positive outlook, because you are remembered. And I personally don't think that it's ever held me back. Again, similar to Chloe and Carly, I'm quite a confident person. I'm happy to talk to people. I'm happy to talk in front of people. I'm happy to tell a man he's doing something wrong, which I know for some people may be quite daunting. But I think definitely for maybe developers and contractors, they tend to wait for people to come to them as opposed to go to others. And I think trying to sometimes push people down a route and looking at a wider variety. I know that when we done one assembly once with a school, they only invited the boys into the assembly because we were a builder, and there was 5 of us that went, and out of the 5, 3 of us were women, and one of them was a site manager, one of them was myself, which was a technical manager, and one of them was in the accounts team. And the school sort of, oh, they were quite taken aback, and we asked the question, why is it only boys in here? And then eventually it got adjusted. But I definitely don't think, and like I said, as a director myself, if I was looking to employ somebody, I'm obviously a massive advocate for women in the industry, and everyone I've ever worked with has been. But I would say there's probably a little bit of a stigma again around, obviously, if you hire a woman, there's the opportunity, there's the potential that she may go on maternity leave, or there's all these sorts of things. And I hate to say it, because I really don't, I don't always feel there's a massive stigma in the industry, and it's never been something that I've personally struggled with. But there is the odd comments and things like that. But I generally think that things are headed in the right direction, and there's a lot more women in the industry than there ever was. So, for example, I now work for a smaller contractor, and we have got more women in the office and things, and within the company to a degree than men. It's not far off 50-50. So it's difficult, but I definitely think it's heading in the right direction, and I do think that everyone has got a part to play in the education around it. I think that individuals need to be more outspoken about what they do. I think the benefit of social media now allows that definitely a lot more, in order to sort of showcase what different companies can offer. But I definitely think that as individual businesses, there is definitely something that could be done. So I'll hand back to Harriet.
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think MVQs are definitely under advertised and not given to everyone as an opportunity, and I think that's really something that everyone needs to be made aware of and given the opportunity to give a go. And like you said, because there's so many out there, options of construction management, options of quantity, like you said, quantity surveying ones as well, something that everyone can do. And like you said, even going to school, even now, you still have the kids that are perhaps not as academic as the other ones, still going out and doing the bricklaying courses and therapy courses. But as you said, there's still a lot of actual academic things involved in those tasks.
Exactly that. And I think as well, a lot of the time with that, some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life are in construction.
Yeah.
So, sorry, hold on 1 second. Apologies, somebody's trying to Teams me at the same time. I'll just let that ring off. But yes, I just think that there's such a part to play from school age children, I think what you learn when you're at school does set a massive precedent for your future. And there's so many kids now leaving school, they sort of, okay, they go do their A levels because that's just what they're told to do.
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
you can't expect teachers to understand more, because at the end I only know my route really. I don't know how to become a dentist or how to become a nurse, or it's what you understand. But I think as construction workers, we have got a massive part to play to try and educate a wider area. Like my sister, for example, she's 10 years younger than me, and she left school 2 years ago now, and she wanted to get into marketing. So I put her in touch with some local developers, and at the time she's like, I don't want to do what you do, and I was like, you're not going to be doing what I do.
It's not the same job.
No, you could work your way up to be a marketing manager for a housing developer, and I said there's still so much involved, and I said I wanted to go to college, and I looked at going to university, but again I never really enjoyed school. But then I worked for Barrett, and they put me through my college courses, they put me through my degree, my HNC, and one benefit is I came out and I haven't got any student debts. So it's another thing that I think a lot of people, it's drilled into them at such a young age that, oh well, to be successful in life, you've got to go to college, you've got to go to university. And yes, okay, I've done that, but I don't feel like I had to do that to be where I am today. I feel that I've learned 10 times more from the other 4 days a week that I was working in the office and on site than I did in the one day I was at university by any stretch. And I think, especially going on a sort of day release, you go sometimes to the universities and the colleges, and what they're teaching you, being in the industry, you think actually that's not how things are done. I'm sure Chloe sort of, when she's been out on site and things, and you speak to apprentices and they come in, they're, well, that's not how you do it. That's not how things are done in practice, because a lot of the time the people that are doing the lectures haven't been in the industry for 30 years. So again, it comes out to a bit of a shock.
It is shocking, and I think especially from school, like you say, teachers are just guiding you through the path that they've been set to tell you that they've gone secondary school, college, university, and that's what they know.
Yeah.
They don't know that there's other options out there, and that's available to everyone.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're almost coming to the end. What I will say is that there are a variety of resources out there should you have more interest in what the topics we've spoken about today. Like Chloe said, Glencar Construction are happy to talk to you if you're looking to come on board about apprenticeships and things, so feel free to get in contact with Chloe. Again, with Carly if you're looking to talk more about health and safety, and with Lauren if you want to discuss more about land planning and views. You can also visit our website, which is www.coursesupport.co.uk, to book any courses for being on site. We also offer a variety of MVQs. And just lastly, I'd like to thank you all for attending. I hope you found this webinar really useful. You can follow our LinkedIn and Facebook pages to keep up to date. And I will just send you a course feedback form